Oh, we're live now on August the 29th, 2023 at 1900 Central Time. So all is lost. But we're actually a week late if we're going to be honest. We're 7 days and 1 minute late. We did a good job of being every 2 weeks for a while. And then my schedule did what my schedule does, but hey, we punted it a week. We knew we were going to punt it a week. We knew a couple weeks ahead of time. So I would, as undisruptive as possible. Now we'll just be on a 2 week schedule from here, right? I've heard that. I've heard some people have real lives. So how are you, Happa? How you doing today? Yeah. Yeah. The 0400 crowd's not my bag.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I guess I've gotten really set in my retired ways now. Like I like sleeping in and I'm like staying up late, so it is what it is. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. Had a crazy week last week, as you know. We had to punt the podcast, like we mentioned, and honestly, I think I worked an 80-hour week, 80-hour week. So that ended up being a lot. But got a lot of cool stuff done. Learned a lot, saw a lot of things, met a lot of people, shook a lot of hands. Wasn't too bad, but I'm glad that week's behind me. This week is now off to a roaring start. Just another day in the Matrix, as it were. So
I mean, I suppose that's what you get for having like an actual job, right?
yeah, I mean, I took the blue pill, right? Not the red pill.
Right.
You ever wonder about yourself, like when some random guy? I mean, look, he looked cool as hell, but he shows up and he's like,
just holding hands out?
Right. You can take this pill and find out just how deep the rabbit hole goes. Or you can take this pill and go back to bed. I was like, I'm going to bed.
I'm going to bed. Also, that's
choice.
not sanitary.
Right. God, what do you mean how deep the rabbit hole goes? You think I care about rabbit holes? I care about eating a steak and getting some sleep.
Oh, yeah. That's actually...
Leave me alone. Go find somebody else.
Sleep right there.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, doing well, man. The weather is it's cooling down a little bit. We've had, weeks and weeks of every day, and I use Windows 11 right at work, and so on the left-hand side of my little bar, it's like near heat record every single day. This week, it's only getting up to 90 today, right? It's only 90 today. My thermometer, my truck only read 96. It wasn't 108 like I sent you the picture of, so
I had to shut the weather notifications off on my phone because every morning hearing the bing to an excessive heat warning has been getting really annoying. But Monday, today, and tomorrow, we're not breaking 100 degrees, so I call that a win.
You don't think you are?
Yeah, right. It's probably my luck, so it's been weird. It's been this year's, this fits what we're going to talk about later, but this year has definitely been, I don't think it's uncharacteristic of Texas weather. It's just we're used to having these temps and then maybe a day to break it up and then a few weeks and then a day or two to break it up, not just consistently straight through. So
yeah, it's been crazy, and we're definitely gonna hit. I think we'll hit as one of our subjects later. It's not directly about our weather, but it's going to be about weather. You guys probably don't want to hear my Twitter /X/ whatever Elon calls it tomorrow notifications.
It's going to be TwitX from here on.
Tweaks. It's going to be
tweaks.
So let's run through Happy. I think we've got a pretty good little docket here for what we're going to talk about. You and I had 3 weeks to talk about different subjects. Things that we thought we were going to talk about, we kind of fell off, and then some new things came up. So we're going to be talking about India landing on the moon. I think that's a pretty big deal, and it's probably worth talking about and have fun talking about that. Some astronauts have been being tested for extended space missions, and there's been some really interesting things that have occurred there we're going to talk about. The world's either on fire or it's flooding. That seems to be the That seems to be where things are. Not a lot in the middle lately. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence in the entertainment industry. I think that's going to be a fun one to run through with you. And then we got a couple of backups, right, in case we need them. There'll be surprises, and most of the subjects we talk about tonight will not be what I just told you. It'll be other stuff. But we're also going to, do our normal stuff, what you watching happen, and we'll hear about Happa's favorite shows and what's happening there.
Man.
And so why don't we get started with talking about India? Go India. Good for you, India. Landing on the moon, landing near the South Pole of the moon, where scientists believe there's potentially water reserves.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I have to ask, because I'm curious, do you think that the plan for some of these other nations to land on the moon is for scientific reasons only?
No. I think you can look at India's. And what I'm about to say is not a criticism, it's a praise.
Sure.
But you can look at how India said, hey, we landed on the moon, right? It's the fourth country to do it. Well, the third country. Okay, so it's the United States, right?
Yep.
Because freedom gets to the moon first, obviously.
Yep.
So we democratized the moon and freedomed it. So we went to the moon, and then there was the Soviet Union, right? Depending on how you want to look at that as a country or as whatever we wanted to call that. And then there's China.
Right. Yep.
And then there's India, and it's they're the first country to land on the South Pole, right, where scientists believe there might be frozen water reserves. And the way that India is kind of talking about it is like, look, we're here, we're a player, and they should. You've landed on the moon.
Yeah, for sure.
That's freaking cool.
Yeah.
And good for them.
And I was reading some of the criticisms, though, that the freaking tinfoil hat people were saying, well, did they really land on the moon? Because the video was very grainy and everything. And luckily, some smart people chimed in right away, and they were like, you do realize they were looking at a live feed of their drone rolling out onto the moon. Like
a live feed from the moon, kids.
Yes. And when we landed originally, no one saw the live feed. Like, it was a delayed transmission that they saw, right? So this is a digital video of that little hatch or little ramp coming down and that little rover going out and gonna be exploring the moon, man. So rock on.
I love it. Yeah, I'm excited for it. And when you when you sent me this subject, I was like, hey, Russia recently landed on the moon too. And
my response was, really?
Yeah. And for those who don't know, Luna 25, one of Russia's missions, recently crashed into the moon. And so technically it did land on the moon. It just landed it was rapidly disassembled by the moon.
I always love that rapidly unscheduled disassembly.
Yeah. I mean, it was an unscheduled rapid disassembly process that they went through to disembark onto the moon. And Russian hardware did make it to the surface of the moon. It just was going, 6.7 trillion miles per hour when it hit it.
Left a crater.
Yeah, there's a new crater on the moon, courtesy of Russia.
Created. Hey, look.
And it really, when you and I were laughing about that, it struck me, right? Because Russia's a country on the way down as far as technology and respect in their ability to unite and create technological advancements. The world's not seeing them the same way they did before they invaded Ukraine, right? And that really is what led to that. And India is on the other end of it, and they're kind of going up. So we're kind of witnessing this, this Russian kind of decline in how the world thinks about them. And I think you asked the question, is it just scientific? No. India is kind of making a statement, right? Like we're here. 1 in every 6 people on Earth is Indian.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Like that's crazy. And I'm really happy for all those folks that their country is doing something that's exploration based, right? Like I wish countries would do more of that. We figure out a lot of ways to blow up bridges, but very few ways to build them.
Yeah. And I think, well, not to say that the world scene doesn't take India seriously, but if you're not or haven't been, I think at this point you should be, because to be able to put together, a space program like this and do what hasn't been done in 50 years, 60 years, something like that, is pretty respectable in my opinion. So,
well, now think about it. Let me ask you this. So look at what happened in the United States of America after we landed on the moon.
Yep.
An entire generation of people, kids primarily, saw that and were like, I'm going to grow up and be science guy. I'm going to grow up and be tech guy, whatever. Do you think that the same may happen in India? We went to the moon. I can do that. They're one of the most, I mean, they're some of the smartest tech folks around.
Yeah, for sure.
But do you think more folks in India are going to be like, no, I'm going to go be part of a space program? And who even knew it? 10 years ago, did you know India had a space program?
No, I had no idea. I know that they had their spending on their military and federal institutions like that has been going up slowly but steadily, but I definitely didn't know they had a space program. I think, and I'd be remiss if I thought for a moment that this wouldn't affect India in any way, shape, or form, but this is a huge home run for them. So it would not surprise me if you start seeing them talk about heading to Mars or even having their own space station at some point if they aren't more involved in the International Space Station. So
yeah, I mean, you've got
International Space Station actually only supposed to be active for like another 6 years or something, I think. Anyway.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be around for too much longer. And you got, India is part of BRICS, which is, if I get this right, Brazil, Russia, India, China, I think. Mm-hmm. And it's it's kind of an answer to NATO originally, but they've done it in a way that they're like, hey, yep, South Africa, that's the yes. Yep. And they've done it in kind of a way where they were like, hey, we're not trying to make a new NATO. We're trying to just make the world a better place, and we think we can do that through cooperation. And this is what led to the conversation you and I had, I think, 2 podcasts ago, where we were talking about, was Putin going to go to the thing? Because South Africa was like, if you do it, we got to arrest you. So it was like a weird thing. This was the BRICS thing. And so India, now you have 2 countries in that space, right? India and China. And if you consider Russia, the Soviet Union, right, then you've got 3 in that space. And in NATO, you got 1, right? Yeah. So there, it's worth India doing the work to say we're an international superpower. They're a nuclear state, right? To me, yeah, sure. It's a scientific message. It's a political message. It's a diplomatic message. It's all those things. And huzzah for them.
For sure. Well, and I mean, we pulled back. We talked about that too. I mean, we pulled back our funding and essentially neutered NASA. So, I mean, the next easy step is for somebody else to take all that talent and all the lessons learned and excel with it. And, say what you will about Mr. Musk, but I mean, SpaceX is filling the void that we have right
Absolutely.
now.
Absolutely.
But I mean, the thing that worries me, though, SpaceX being a company, he could very easily say, well, I'm moving to whatever, Mumbai or whatever, wherever their space.
Oh, and will.
Yeah. Because it may end up being more profitable for him at that point. It's a business decision, right? So
yeah, we've given up on. It's pretty interesting when we, and I have a lot of strongly held opinions about that whole time in our country where we said, hey, we're not going to do space shuttles anymore. And then we went through a whole period where we said we're going to defund NASA, and the people that made that statement weren't actually the authorities who could do the thing, but that didn't matter to the people who were rocket scientists, and they've gone other places like India. Mm-hmm. And we were depending on Russia to get us to the space station and back, and I look at the deprivatization of space travel, which is what you're talking about with SpaceX, a company can move us back and forth to the space station. And thank goodness that they were there, because with our relationship with Russia right now, we may not be able to get back and forth to the space station.
Yeah.
That would have been a bargaining chip in play, as we went through some steps that, our leaders thought were necessary. Talking about economic sanctions and whatever, there was a bargaining chip on the table, which was, hey, we can get you to the space station and get you back. And we may or may not do that. And they started rattling their sabers about that stuff. So thank goodness we've got a company that stepped up and is doing it. But my goodness, what if we didn't?
So I guess, because that opens a whole new door of worry or thought in terms of political impacts of this, right? Because if India has a stable space program, let's say, and for whatever reason India wants to support continued action in space, and the cost being charged to the U.S. government is something we're not going to fund at some point, because let's be honest, the longer we go, there's less money going into said politicians' pockets and not enough going out to programs that need it. Is to them, to the politicians, they're going to be okay with that. So if they can stop paying for these space flights from Cape Canaveral using SpaceX, you figure eventually Musk's going to be like, all right, well, I'll go where they will pay me. So then he leaves.
Sure.
So at that point now we have no foot in the door in the space at all. Like,
yeah, I mean, Musk is I'm glad there's a company, SpaceX, that's out there doing this. Musk is at best unpredictable, right? And so
100%.
it might not even be profit motivated. He could absolutely leave over politics.
Yeah.
And he's the kind of guy that will do that just to get a few headlines. And yeah, so no, it's an interesting but a bit precipitous. NASA is still very competent. NASA is still doing some great stuff. They're planning on missions to Mars. They're planning on, I think, in our lifetimes, assuming we live full natural lives, 280, 190, whatever it is you're going to live to,
Totally.
that we may see a permanent manned moon station. We may see a Mars manned station.
That'd be crazy.
Right? But that's how close we are to this stuff, right? It's you've got other countries like India saying we can land. I mean, think about what it takes to land something on a moon. I mean, getting there is one thing,
right? Honestly,
anything, yeah.
I mean, you're taking something epically small in the scale of planets, firing it from a marble that's hurling through space, using only math, and hopefully getting the math right. And somebody converted inches to millimeters or whatever correctly, and trying to hit another marble out in space. And then the real trick, what they always said, like NASA always used to say, it wasn't hard getting astronauts to the moon. It was hard getting them back. That was the hard part.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess that's the next step for... I don't know what India has planned with the rover. I know they're going to do tests, and they want to check if there's water and what is underground and stuff.
Dude, can you imagine if they find water?
Was the plan to bring that back? I'm kind of curious. I didn't see...
I think I was reading, and I'm definitely not the authority, but when I was reading about it, I think the plan was it's going to send data back, and it's going to search for this water at the South Pole. And if they find water at the South Pole, because there's craters there that have been... I think they're either always shaded or they're the most often shaded craters, and they're thinking, hey, maybe there's water in the form of ice below the surface there. So let's say the little rover skeets on down in the crater, goes a little dig. It's like, hey, it's an ocean here.
Yeah.
Of water. There's plenty of water. All you need is some desalination, or maybe not even that, right?
Just filters.
And and because water is water and oxygen, right? Those are the things that are hard to move.
Yep.
Water's heavy.
Yep.
Water's heavy. Oxygen takes up a ton of space, right? So like these things are hard to move, and if you don't have to move one of those, you're a lot more likely to be able to say, hey, I'm going to be there for a while. I've got some supplies there in the form of water. I mean, there's a whole lot of ramifications for. It's going to be interesting to see what they find, and I'm excited that they're doing it, and I hope that the international community continues to kind of rally around each other. Even when Russia was, politicians were saying, we're not going to take you to the space station, the Russian scientists were like, nah, dude, we are. Right? Because the science community is trying really hard to show some leadership on this planet.
Be open to each other, not like we've been in the past.
Right. They're trying really hard to be like, we could work together. I mean, the International Space Station is international for a reason.
Exactly. Yeah.
There are Russians and Americans hanging out on the space station, right? Like.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and those scientists have seen, both sides of the house have seen the benefit of working together, and we know the detractors of not, because of decades and decades of Cold War. So to me, there's just only to benefit. Right, in the long run, to work together.
Yeah.
It's just silly that we wouldn't, but I don't know.
Yep.
I suppose I'm a bit of a skeptic when it comes to that, just because humans are human and we tend to not have humility when it comes to major endeavors like that, it seems like, anyway.
What did Team Fortress 2, the sniper video, say? As long as there are two people left on this planet, someone's going to want someone else dead.
Yep. Yep.
I think that's hilariously jaded, right? It's hilariously jaded. And, and we're talking about like this space travel, and there's going to be these missions to Mars, and one of the studies that's actually going on in Russia, we've kind of talked a little bit around this, but one of the studies that's going on is these astronauts. We want manned moon missions. We want people to be on the moon. We want people to be in Mars, and there's a lot of reasons we want to do that. As a species, I think there's plenty of people saying, this one may not last. We might want to find another one. And there's just the human exploration, but there's this test that's been going on in Russia with these potential space travelers. Whether you call them, whatever you call them, astronauts was what we would call them, but these potential space travelers, and they've isolated them and had them do the things that you would do if you were headed to Mars. And some of the most fascinating stuff has happened. And some of the things I thought were really interesting that they were measuring, and I don't think the folks that were involved, that were part of this, necessarily know what all's being measured, right? So,
sure.
But they're trying to measure how would people behave in that scenario. And one of the things they're measuring is how often will these people kind of phone home? Yeah. How often will they report back, this is my status? And what they have found in these studies is that the longer these folks are becoming a unit and independent, the less they will report back, which is a huge concern, because that is a human complacency, take things for granted moment. Everything went fine the past 90 days or 120 days. Obviously, everything's going to be fine. And you're not reporting back to, and all of a sudden some engineer didn't catch that your oxygen levels, whatever it was, and there's no support coming. Yep. Super fascinating. So when you're talking about, like, what are your thoughts on like people working in like that sort of isolation for, we're talking about potentially years here.
Well, so, I was thinking about it when I read a couple of these different articles talking about this situation. So first off, the trip to Mars is, I think they say 7 months, 8 months, something like that. But you'd be talking about, they'd probably be going to space first, getting position, whatever they need to do, the travel out, whatever mission they got on planet, and then the travel back. So you're talking possibly a couple years, right, where they would be isolated. And I had thought about it a little bit. I was like, I kind of have actually a little bit of a point of view on this, probably, that the average person doesn't, because being in the Navy, when we go out to sea, there's times where we didn't see land for 3-4 months, or I'd see land, it'd be over there somewhere, right? And you are isolated at that point, but you're still talking crews of, at the smallest, 200-300, right? So not maybe 12 to 20 that you would have on a spacecraft. But I guess for me, I didn't understand maybe what the thought process is, why they would allow the crews to, I think this was just in the blind test. Like, they didn't say, these are your regulations and rules, like you're required to contact us every Monday or whatever.
No, they did.
I missed that then. But
yeah, no, that was
they had said that an all male crew steadily reported back less and less and less, and an all female crew actually continued to report, but their emotions got more into those reports as they went. And then when they did the integrated crews, it seemed to level them out a little bit, which is good. But I thought that was interesting too, because I was in the Navy when we didn't have integrated crews still. It was all males. And I was obviously in the Navy when we had integrated crews. And people always used to tell, they'd ask me, what's the pros and cons of integrated crews? And I say, well, I didn't look at too many cons of an integrated crew, but looking back, we tended to get things done more with no bullshit, excuse the language. Like, we had no time to screw around, we got it all done. But when we started having the integrated crews, the females on board tended to mellow the men out a little bit, because you got, a ship full of testosterone, so there's a lot of wrestling and just stupid hijinks going on off hours that really didn't benefit anything, Whereas when the women came in, the men tended to come down a little bit off that a little bit, and so the working environment was a little bit more relaxed, which, like it or not, they may not be the best way to handle it, but I guess for me, I just don't understand is if you have a professional crew, how that reporting could, because there's no ramifications, right? It's not like they could fly an exec up there and slap them around,
absolutely.
right? So,
absolutely,
I guess I just don't understand how that internally to those folks they could recognize that that's not okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I can't imagine, me and 5 other people being out that isolated, and it really does. I mean, let's say we were camping. Let's just say camping, right? And we knew we were going to be out there for 6 months, and after some period of time, we're going to hit a routine.
Yeah.
Whatever that routine is, and if that routine is comfortable,
yeah,
maybe we don't report back. And I think that's the concern is when you're talking about being on another planet, which I can't believe. I mean, it's 2023. Like, we're here talking about people actually being on another planet. Seriously. And we as a species are planning for that. Like, that's the research we're doing, and we're getting ready to do that. And when we're talking about being on another planet, if people aren't reporting back, we can't help them.
Yeah.
If we don't know what's going on. Now, I think what, and I'd read some more about this, and I think part of one of the things that's really interesting is when you're talking about a trip to, say, Mars, you have to be really, really, really aware of everything you send, right? Everything that weighs something is one more reason you won't make it there. Yeah. And so obviously they're going to be extremely sensitive to like anything that's heavy or whatever. So they have to also think about, when you talk about building your systems, you have to see, what sensors am I going to put on there? What data is it going to send? What sensors am I going to leave out? Yeah. Right? Because, I mean, if we're building it here on Earth and we don't care about weight, right? Because Earth is the perfect spaceship, even though we're, actively fighting over it, trying to ruin it, whatever it is a perfect spaceship, right? Yeah. If it was like a custom built spaceship for humans, we are floating through space. But now we're building little space shuttles and ships that are leaving this. But if we were here on Earth building it, we would add like 1 million sensors.
For sure.
We would know everyone's oxygen level. We would know everything that was going on. We'd know all the carbon, dioxide, monoxide, whatever it is. We know everything about every plant. We know everything about everything. But if you're going to send it to Mars, you got to be really selective with what sensors and stuff you're going to use. Yeah. And so it was talking about the kind of things they weren't going to report back on. We have to find, that's the research, right? We have to find ways to automate that in. Yeah. And be like, even if they don't voluntarily report it back, we have to have ways of knowing it occurred. Right? So we can prompt them, or we can ask them, or we can go ahead and get that mission ready, because we got to have 7 months between now and then that you're going to need a screwdriver. Yeah. We forgot this. We got the Phillips head, right? But we forgot the flathead. Sorry about that.
And with the increased time with communication, like you send a message, you got to wait, right? Mm-hmm. Because the sensor reading that you might get here on the planet is whatever, hours or an hour late. You already learned that half the ship's out of oxygen or whatever. Like, it's too late at that point, right?
Yeah, that's a good. What is the communication delay between Mars? I used to actually know that. Let me see if I can find what that is.
It actually says 5 to 20 minutes. So I'm actually incorrect.
Okay. Well, 5 to 20 minutes.
On the position of Mars to Earth. Yeah. Right.
So what's interesting about that, what I was going to say is, if you've ever been in I'm going to be as positive I can be, as positive as I can be here. If you've ever been in a harrowing situation, right, a situation where you truly believed you are faced with life or death, like truly.
Yep.
5 minutes is forever.
Yes. Yeah. That time dilation is a thing for sure. I mean, I had a couple situations when we were off the coast of Iraq where I was hoping to get the order to shoot down an incoming missile, because at that time Iraq, when we invaded, they had, their anti-ship missiles were like telephone pole sized bottle rockets. Like, they're like, the ship is in that general direction, if I light the fuse, and they fired it out in the Gulf,
It's like a
and I mean, but in their defense, the entirety of the U.S. Navy, British Navy, French Navy, Italian Navy, everyone's Navy was in that little itty bitty area off the coast of Iraq. So the likelihood of them hitting something was pretty good.
It was higher than normal.
Right, yeah, for sure. And I mean, we were out there tracking this missile, and I was the guy that had my finger on the button to shoot it down. And I will tell you that the 8 minutes that it took that missile to arc towards us was the longest 8 minutes of my life, because I didn't know if I got the order in this ear to shoot, and then I went out to comms through the mic and out to the other ships in this ear, if my brain, the thing in the middle, would process enough to get the message out and hit the button. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like the bowl of spaghetti noodles stored inside your skull.
Exactly. And I'll tell you, when you got adrenaline pumping, man, you're not lying. Like 5 minutes is a very long time. Like,
a lot can happen in 5 minutes. We tend to talk about things like 5 minutes, or let's say 20, whatever, that, depending on how far the Earth and Mars are away. We tend to talk about 5 minutes. Honestly, 5 minutes is like the way to say I don't need much of your time. Hey, I just need 5 minutes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right, you got 5 minutes, but 5 minutes in those situations, I've been in several situations in my life, and those are probably happen 7 whiskey conversations at the bar, not podcast situation, conversations, but I've been in those situations where where time completely slows down. And, you see it in movies and stuff where a car is spinning, in a wreck, and the person's like, did I leave the oven on? Like, it's just,
all the random BS that you don't need to think about.
But in those moments, you really find out the human brain is pretty amazing and can process really quickly. But these people, whether it's the moon, right, or whether it's Mars, and we have these manned residences, camps, these missions, they're on their own, man.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to act. You're going to have to find a very special crew of people who can do the things we need them to do, can be the first humans to colonize another planet, and can send the email once a day they're supposed to send. Right? Like, right? That's what they're supposed to do. Is like, oh, don't let me forget to do my video diary. Dear diary, day 426. Right? But they've got to do all this high level stuff, and then they've also got to do the bookkeeping and all the stuff. It's going to be a pretty special group of people.
Have you read the book, The Martian? I'm sure you've seen the movie.
I've seen the movie. Seen the movie. I've not read the book, but I've heard the book was fantastic.
You should read the book, because they get into some of the psychology behind, the head of NASA. He gets a lot of flack during the movie. Spoiler alert for those of you who haven't seen the movie. But,
oh, goodness. You haven't seen the movie from, what was it, 2014?
But he makes the call to not tell the guy stranded on Mars, right? And nobody can understand why they're not telling the crew of the spaceship that's returning. And he's like, they've got all that other crap they got to worry about.
Yeah.
The last thing I need to do is add the stress of knowing they left someone behind. Like, and that's the type of person that you actually, as much as he seems like an asshole, you need that guy. You need that guy in charge.
100%.
Because he's got to make decisions like that. Because, like we said, 5 minutes is a very long time. Now add explosive decompression to that in 5 minutes. Right? Like, they've got to deal with everything going on. They can't deal with other stuff. So, I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see, because a lot of the testing that was going on the International Space Station was specific to isolation tests and things like that over the years. So, I'm kind of curious to see when they start moving these tests. At some point, they've got to move them into space and be doing full on tests where they have like a time delay and everything. I just imagine that's like the next logical step, right? And then,
I mean, the moon might be that, right? Like, that would
be yeah.
If we can, the thing I saw, I think Trump took a lot of heat as president for saying we should have a base on the moon, right? And you and I have talked. We're not going to get into politics here, but I truly believe that every president does great things and every president does not great things. And so I'm not saying something is great or not great. But what I'm saying is, during Trump's administration, he was like, hey, I want to put a base on the moon. And he took a lot of flack for that from a lot of people. And I'm like, that's actually not a bad idea for a lot of reasons. We need to learn how to send up the 3D printers, right? Which is
everything.
I was at the Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, Alabama. It was maybe a couple of years back, but not too long ago, right before COVID, I guess. And they have a whole thing about the mission to Mars and talking about, they can't predict what the astronauts will need on Mars.
Right.
So it doesn't make any sense to send tools or things that are already preformed. It would just be to have the extensive number of things you may need is not going to work. So what they're planning to do, or what they were talking about then, is sending up raw materials and 3D printers. Right. And they could do that without worrying about, those can go before. Right. So they can send, they've proven they can put little tanks all over Mars. Right. As far as I'm aware, Mars is still the only planet in the universe fully populated by robots.
Yeah.
Right. So we can put little robots out there, and they're like, we can send all that up, and it can be ready to go when y'all get there. So y'all can just like come down and be like, oh man, you know what? I forgot a screwdriver here. Got a screwdriver now.
I mean, it makes perfect sense that you would probably use, once you get good at sending stuff and people back and forth between Earth and the Moon, at that point's when you should be looking at going further, right? I would think that would be the, first would be a space station orbiting this planet, and then the next would be the moon, and the baby steps. Let's just go from I just started walking to driving a car like 2 seconds later. Like
absolutely. And then we'll be talking about moons from other planets and whatever else, and then we're living in the universe from the Expanse, right? We're mining the outer belt, and we have belters and Belta Lauda and all that stuff is going on. So you watched it yet? You started watching it yet?
Oh yeah, of course I have. I saw the whole all of Expanse. I'm watching it.
It wasn't you that hasn't. It was Deke. It was Deke that hasn't watched it.
Yeah, Deacon hasn't seen it for sure. We need to get him on board with that. I'm on my. I just finished my second binge watch through, so it was definitely worth it. But
well, I think we've talked about it 3 podcasts in a row. The Expanse is worth watching.
We like to do that though. We like talking about the same subjects over and over. So if you haven't seen The Expanse, you need to go watch it. If anything, for the science that's in the show.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. Yes. So HAPA, we're talking about space. We're talking about all this stuff going on in space. India getting to the moon. Russia taking a shot at the moon, trying to knock it out of orbit.
They hit that bullseye, though.
Oh, they hit it. They've proven they can hit the moon.
At least. I think that's the bare minimum, right?
Yeah, I think landing on the moon in a controlled manner. Wow. So, but let's talk about why we might want to get off this rock. Right now, it seems like if you just keep up with the news, you and I make a point to look every day and try to get, just to get subjects together for this, also just to have things to talk about and know what's going on.
Yep.
The world is either on fire or it's flooding, HAPA. One of those two things seems to be going on everywhere.
I mean, to be clear, I don't know. It seems like every year it gets worse, but at the same time, I feel like you always remember the worst. Like you're not going to remember if things are better, right? So, you had mentioned specifically talking about Canada's wildfires because it was a big deal to the world for about 32 seconds. And then all of a sudden, everybody stopped talking about it.
Yeah, even though the sky's still red, everyone's like, I guess we'll talk about something else now. But the sky is still red. Yeah, we'll talk about something else.
Huge portions of actually, it's eastern, central, and western now.
Central?
Central. It's 3 words, actually. Are actually on fire.
Yeah.
So,
we've got Hawaii on fire. We've got Canada on fire. We've got Los Angeles getting a hurricane. We've got hurricane. What is it?
Let's pump the brakes for about 2 seconds. It's sprinkled. Like, I get that we need to make sure that we know, because a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, it's a hurricane hitting Southern California." Come on now. Like, yes, a hurricane did in fact head toward the southwestern United States, but by the time it hit landfall, it was rain.
So, you know my story about the first time I was in San Francisco, right? I flew into what they were calling a bomb cyclone.
Yeah. No, those are scary.
Well, so we were freaked out, right? And look, I'm from Alabama. People make fun of Alabamians for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is, well, I mean, tornadoes can't be that bad, which is what people say all the time. And I'm
which
like,
is lunacy, by the way.
Oh my God, yeah. And they're like, well, why don't you just have houses that can stand up to tornadoes?
You obviously never built a house before.
Why don't we build houses that can stand up to tornadoes? So I was out in San Francisco, and there was a bomb cyclone and I didn't know what a bomb cyclone was. I thought the cyclone was like a Pacific version of the hurricane. I didn't know. I've always lived I've never lived on the West Coast, right? The Pacific's never really been that much in play for me. And so I'm like, oh my God, bomb cyclone. We get off the airplane, we're walking through the airport. Bomb cyclone, bomb everywhere. And we get to the hotel and we're hunkered down. It's like all right, here we go, guys. We made it to the hotel. And we look and there's like it's a storm. Yeah. And we're like, what was it? We start looking around and we're like, when's it coming? When's the bomb cyclone happening? And they're like, this is the bomb cyclone now. And we're like, I told the kids, I was like, you guys want to go to the Museum of Art? Like, we walked over to the MoMA, right? The Museum of Modern Art down in San Francisco. We're like, oh, we'll walk in this. You got an umbrella? Yeah. So it's different though, and I learned in that process that in San Francisco, at least what I was learning is it'll rain. The plants don't root deep enough because they don't get enough rain. Yes. They don't root deep enough that landslides occur. And then even worse, this rain will cause these plants to grow again, which they once again won't root deep enough, and then it'll happen again. And so like the cycle of dry rain, which very foreign to me living in a subtropical place like this, like Alabama, right? It just rains here. And the roots go way deep. So like the plants keep everything together. Very fascinating the fact that we have, hurricanes hitting, whatever it is, Los Angeles, and the fact that it was Hurricane Hillary is hilarious to me. Yeah. And now we have a hurricane spinning up in the Gulf right now, Idalia. It's going to hit the west coast of Florida. And one of the things I was reading was they were talking about, and you and I were talking about this a few weeks back, how hot the water is in the Gulf of Mexico right now.
Yes.
Right. It's 88 or 89 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 31, 32 degrees Celsius ish. I think I'm right there.
You're right around there, yeah.
Yeah, it's right around there. So that's really warm for an ocean. And hurricanes spinning weather feeds on warm, lower areas, right? So like water that's warm is just like jet fuel for a hurricane. And so now they're worried about Idalia hitting Florida and causing all kinds of flooding. So we've got fires in Canada, and in Hawaii. And some of those are natural, some of those are not natural. And I mean, a lot of those times it's in Hawaii, you've got a situation where they're like, oh, it was the electric company. They're like, oh, it was the contractors. Oh, it was the firemen.
Nobody wants to take the hit, right? So they're going to point fingers at somebody else. But I mean, so I like that you mentioned in Cali about the plants not rooting, because the hurricane, to be clear, when everyone was freaking about a hurricane, I was like, the hurricane isn't the problem. The hurricane's not the problem at all. The problem is all the Californians that build all their houses on cliff faces because they wanted a nice view, not recognizing that when it does rain finally, those houses are now slides, right? Like,
dude, the first time I was in San Diego and saw some of those houses hanging over cliffs, I was like, wow.
La Jolla Hills has been progressively falling into the ocean for decades, and we still build houses right on the edge of that.
And we're still building on it?
Mm-hmm.
So where's La Jolla Hills? Where is that?
Just north of San Diego. It's probably, it's like San Diego, they're right butted up against San Diego's La Jolla, and that's right on Highway 101. And there are areas where legitimately... I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, and there's legitimately areas where they actually will have like a house, and almost at some point, I'm sure 30, 40 feet out, there was a fence that said do not cross, but it had been slowly being moved toward the houses. And so when these rainstorms come, and arguably the ground needs that rain on occasion, but we do it to ourselves because we also bulldoze to clear for houses, not thinking that the little bit of roots that's there actually do help. Putting a slab of cement on top of dirt that has no roots in it is not great on the edge of a cliff, right? So
humans create a lot of our own.
Yep.
We're good at creating our own problems. We're good at solving our own problems. We're an interesting species, right? And that's
we tend to create more problems though as we go, though.
We saw I was at a college commencement speech once, and the guy said, every generation inherits its previous generation's problems, but it solves many of the previous generation's problems while creating its own. And it's just like this cycle of solving a problem, passing it on, solving a different problem, passing it on. I mean, at least we're not, breathing leaded gasoline
anymore. Yeah, thank
right.
God.
So but we were talking before the podcast a little bit about the natural patterns that the planet will take from a climate standpoint, and whether you think and you're free to talk on this as much as you want or don't, but whether people think humans are contributing or not. What's interesting to me is there's kind of no denying that we're not living the best way possible. And a lot of the things, there are some people out there who are just a little overboard in every way. No matter what thing you're talking about, there's going to be someone in an extreme there. But, not dumping nuclear waste into the ocean is probably a good idea.
Probably, yeah.
Right? There's some steps that I think we could take that are just, they don't seem that extreme to me, China. Not going to lie.
Well, I mean, so that's a perfect, you bring that up, that China pumps out more CO2 and pollution into the world than all of the other countries on this planet combined. Yep. And that's why I say, it's probably the wrong attitude to have, but bro across the street that's got his Tesla and feels nice about himself because he's not driving a Suburban, bro, you're not doing anything. Even if the entire United States went to 0 carbon emission, we are not doing anything. We're not influencing that. I'm not saying.
So you're telling me that the noodle straws,
are
not the solve? Because the noodle straws piss me off. I don't like the noodle straws.
I can't say that. I'm required by law to not talk about that anymore.
I don't like the noodle straws. I can live with the paper straws. I don't like them. Right? I prefer a plastic straw.
You mean drink flavoring straws? Because
those are
just in your drink.
The noodle ones are just too much for me. Right? The noodle straws, I'm like, I think you went too far.
That is the limit. We've established.
Yeah, that was my line. What is it, ziti?
But I mean,
using ziti as a straw. No,
I
don't.
Basically, it's not crunchy anymore. It's mushy.
Yeah, but it's gross.
Where we started on the subject, though, we were talking about Canada's wildfires and how they didn't. There's really not too many people talking about the fact that a lot of Canada is legitimately on fire. I was
absolutely
reading the other day that they are estimating that 75 to 85% of those wildfires up in Canada were human started. They were arson. So you add on to the, like you said, maybe pouring nuclear waste in the ocean is not a good idea. How about we stop setting our own house on fire?
Maybe we don't burn down the forest.
Oregon 2019 had one of the worst wildfires in the Columbia Gorge. There was historic buildings that had been up for 200 years that burnt down because some kids wanted to fire off fireworks in the forest in one of the driest summers in history. Yeah, they found the kids. It was 4 or 5, 13, 14, 15-year-olds that were firing fireworks off into the forest, burnt down 1 million acres or something like that in Oregon. I mean, there right now there's, what did I say? How many acres? I meant to see how many acres.
What, in Canada right now?
Yeah.
That's a lot. I remember it being
37 million acres have burned. That's an unquantifiable in my brain. I can't figure that out.
That's a lot of the Earth's. That's a lot of the Earth's lungs.
Yeah.
Getting burnt. That's how the Earth cleans the air for us. I would rather us not burn it all down if possible. I for one enjoy oxygen. Now, so I'm not saying all humans have to.
You want to figure out what the size of area that's burning in Canada right now? Alabama, your home state, is 34 million acres. And 37 million acres has been burning.
Okay. So Alabama and the Panhandle of Florida.
Gone. Just burnt.
Just burnt.
Now that being said, nature bounces back and is extremely resilient, but I still will stick to my statement of how about we just don't burn our own house down?
Yeah, this is our spaceship, guys. I know everybody's obsessed with finding, let's get a spaceship and go to Mars. Okay, we're on a pretty good spaceship right now.
Yeah. How about we do some house cleaning? A little bit.
Yeah, how about we maintain the spaceship we got? I'm all about going to Mars as well. They're not mutually exclusive. We can have a pretty nice spaceship here, with our little climate system, like climate control system. We got all of it, man. We got it all figured out. The whole planet is basically a custom built spaceship for humans. And maybe we don't try to kill it. Maybe we don't light the forest. Maybe we don't light 38 million acres of forest on fire in Canada.
Yeah. I mean,
if that's just not a.
To give you perspective, in 2021, Siberian. So a lot of people don't. They talk about the Amazon rainforest as being like the biggest. One of our big oxygen producers and everything. And one of the things when Seven talked to me about this subject before, I said, look, I've got a lot of stupid information rattling around in my head about the Siberian. People don't realize the Siberian arboreal forest actually produces more oxygen than the entire Amazon rainforest combined. And in 2021, 46 million acres of that burned. It is the largest forest fire that entire Eurasia continent has ever seen.
I guess there's really nothing. I guess when the fire is burning wild like that, there's not a lot we can do, is there?
No.
Hope for rain?
Really isn't. Nope. And in fact, when though that size or that scale wildfire is going on, the only thing the authorities can do is try to go to city centers and prevent the city centers from burning. They have to let the forest burn.
Protect population centers.
Yep. There's nothing else you could do. What are you gonna do? You can't. There's not enough fire trucks and hose in the world to try to stop that.
Shake your finger at it angrily.
Angrily, it screamed to go out. Right.
Get out of here, you fire!
But you talk about that. You talk about how many acres in Canada are burning. That a lot of it's arson. Siberian rainforest. 46 million acres of it were burned. Also suspected that some of it might have been arson, but you add in that they had a lot lower rain than normal, and then you go to the Amazon where there's literally people that are claiming farmland as recovery after Amazon forests have burnt down, intentionally burning it down so that land can be claimed for forest land in Brazil and those areas. I don't understand it. I can't fathom in my brain why we're doing that, why we continue to do that. I guess little farmer Timmy, who doesn't necessarily even know where the United States is on a globe or whatever, they're worried about their whatever sorghum farm or whatever they're going to do. They don't give a shit about the Amazon, right? So I guess that's, ignorance is bliss. Is that where we're at now?
Well, I mean, if we as a species are actively destroying the planet we have, do we really need another one?
That's why we joked the last podcast about the aliens. Like, why aren't the aliens coming out and saying hi? It's like, well, I firmly believe that. I bet you when aliens go by, they're like, hey, lock your door. Like, we're that neighborhood.
Yeah,
right? Like,
I'm not from a wealthy place. But a story. I once visited a friend in Detroit, and it was after Detroit's heyday. And anyone who's been in Detroit is got some rebound in it now. But there was a period of time where setting old houses on fire in Detroit was a hobby. And I promise you, if aliens are cruising around the universe and they stop for a minute to go slow by our house, they're going to look over and be like, no, y'all, we're going over to this other house over here, right?
Yeah.
Because we act like a bunch of fools most of the time. Just as humans, we're not really that good to each other. We're not really good to the planet. And I'm not a Greenpeace guy, right? I'm not someone who's extreme about that. But man, some of the stuff like you're talking about, people lighting forests on fire on purpose in the Amazon because they want to reclaim some territories, they can have whatever farm, and then those people are trying to eke out a living, right? Like you were saying, like this, not like these are. But then you've also got like corporate greed. Man, we got some work to do, Happa.
Well, I mean, if you look at Deep Rock. That's a video game.
You're gonna play Deep Rock Galactic, yeah. If you look at Deep Rock Galactic and the history of Deep Rock Galactic, All the answers are there.
What was that oil rig that, not Deep Rock, but it was the oil rig right off the coast of Alabama, actually, that in Louisiana that blew up, and because they blew up, they were just pumping sewage or crude into the Gulf for like a month and a half or 49 days or something like that.
Yeah, what was that?
Something Rock. That? I can't remember. 30 Rock? Is that?
It was the one in the Gulf. Deepwater Horizon.
Deepwater Horizon. So, I mean, you've got a crap ton of oil rigs like that.
Shrimp tasted weird. That seafood from that area.
I believe it.
The water had a sheen on it. Like, I remember all that. That was nasty.
And it's funny because I didn't think about that. You and I talked about this when I sent you. I think we had talked about this like a month ago, where we were talking about the temperatures in the Gulf. We were how they are.
Yep.
Like it's not like 1 or 2 degrees. It's like 8 or 9 or 10 degrees above.
Right. The Gulf of
normal.
Mexico is hot right now.
Yes. and one of the things I was watching. I mean, I'll plug him. I don't care all day long. But Joe Rogan's podcast, he was talking to a gentleman.
Have us on, Uncle Joe.
I would love it, man. I'll bring you some whiskey. But he was talking with a gentleman that hunts pythons in Florida about how the way the ecosystem in Florida originally worked was all the swamps in Florida filtered all the fresh water that was coming down from the north, so that when it hit the Gulf of Mexico, that water was capable of mixing with the salt water, and there wasn't a huge impact to the ecosystem. But now with Miami and Orlando, all these cities all over Florida where they literally emptied these swamps out, it has gotten to the point where they've got cofferdams of this water and waste from the cities now mixing and going directly into the Gulf, which is influencing
because of course.
He said he believes it directly is influencing the blooms, right? The algae blooms in the Gulf, which directly influences the temperatures. Like fresh water and salt water do not mix. And when you have an increase of one, it throws the ecosystem off for the other. And a lot of people don't realize that fresh water and salt water, those two influence each other and balance out the temperature in the ocean. So if it gets too salty or gets too fresh, then those ecosystems are thrown off and temperatures get thrown off. And so, I'm not going to say like, a lot of our politicians have said in the last 10 years, like, we got 5 years before all of Florida's underwater and New York. And like, I won't say that, but you're definitely seeing the impact.
Oh, there's absolutely, there's to me, right? There's no arguing that humans are having an impact on the planet.
For sure.
There's a trash pile the size of, right, floating around the oceans, right? Like we are having an impact. Can we calculate that impact? I don't know. Arguing whether we're having it or not, it really isn't relevant. We are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And some of the behaviors that we can undertake as human beings aren't that drastic, right? Some of them are just don't be a jerk. Right. Some of the behaviors that we're talking about are very practical, like don't be a jerk, right? Kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And people are like, it turns into, just like you said, it's a political talking point. And some people were like extreme, like we've got 38 days and 4 seconds until the whole planet turns into a post-apocalyptic dust pile. And then on the other side of that, you've got people who say humans have no impact on the planet in any way, shape, or form, and it becomes this like polarizing thing. And it's like, hey, how can you say either one of those? One of those things with a straight face. Hopefully, cooler. We fixed the ozone to a large degree. We figured that one out.
That hole is actually almost closed now.
Yeah, we did a pretty good job there. Yeah, I did. Oh, I absolutely did, because I was a kid growing up when we were doing like just spraying the sprays up in the air, and
just watching it, lighting it on fire.
Just watching the ozone just open for like, oh, that's a hold the atmosphere, right? Stupid ass kids, right? Like out playing with lawn darts and whatever else we were doing, licking lead paint. Yeah. But that was the day I grew up in. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of stuff that we could be doing. Just being a better human, right? It's something you say a lot, right? Just be a better human.
Yeah. I wish that translated to corporations, though. I mean, at the end of the day.
Oh my gosh, dude. So it's not a bad segue to talk about corporate greed.
Yeah, man.
Companies, man. And I can't really fault them if I'm being honest. Companies are designed. What is a company? Let's talk about that. What is a corporation? Why would we form a corporation? Let's say Happa and Seven decide to form a corporation. The only reason we would decide to do that is because we're looking for financial benefits of some sort or legal protections for those financial benefits of some sort. So you can't really fault a corporation for doing the thing a corporation is intended to do, which is get more money and hold on to more money and keep more money. But we've begun to excuse corporations and be like, oh, they can just do whatever and it's okay. But it's really not, right? And then you get all the way into like cancel culture.
Hold on. I don't want to say that. I don't think that anybody puts things in line to excuse a company from getting away with something. I'm trying not to allude to what we're going to talk about.
Maybe take it. We take for granted that companies act the way companies act.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Maybe that's a better way to say it. So thank you. Yeah. We have this kind of mindset where it's like, oh, companies are doing company things.
There's like, nothing I could do.
Right. Well, they put 1 trillion gallons of oil into the Gulf of Mexico. I guess it's the company. Oh, what am I
gonna do? Yeah.
Right. And now we have this situation which I'm just miffed about, and that's how this thing got on the conversation. But docket for
crazy,
today
by
was
the way. Legit. I've been excited for this topic for this.
And so I was. And you might have sent me you sent me the link. Mm-hmm, you are the one that did. Dune Part 2 is being delayed. Okay. Now.
An entire year.
Dune Part 2 is being delayed. Why? Because of the writer's strike and because of the Screen Actors Guild strike. Now, okay. This is fascinating to me. And you and I were going back and forth, and we had to be really careful not to get too deep into this because we wanted to talk about it here.
Yeah.
So let's go back. It's been going on. I wrote it down earlier. It has been going on since May the 2nd. That was the day that the writer's strike began.
And we're almost in September right now.
Yeah. Right. Think about what we're saying here. May the 2nd, that strike began. Over time, more and more and more people, and we're going to talk about why, more and more people are joining in with the writers, right? The Screen Actors have joined in. You've got some really big names, especially nighttime television personalities, right? You've got some people who are going out of their way to help this, because these people don't get paid if they're not working.
Yep. Yeah.
And so recently, if anyone hasn't been keeping up, because the media tends to do, so Canadian wildfires were really cool for 14 seconds.
Right.
This was really important. Right, this was really important for 6 seconds too. But the more recent news, it's been going since May the 2nd. More recent news is they're starting to get a little bit of compromise around very specific areas. And so part of the strike began with what I will call a wholesale change in how entertainment, in particular video entertainment, is distributed. Right, so it's no longer just theaters. It's no longer just television deals or whatever. They're streaming.
Yep.
So that's one part of it. And for several years, we've witnessed series being canceled, all these things, because companies are making a decision not to continue because they don't want to pay writers. They have to pay writers more after their second season. They don't want to do it. And it's very obvious that, it was a great show, you need another season. No.
The more popular it is, the more they have to pay, so they don't want to do it.
And they don't want to do it.
Yep.
Now, the more recent thing, one of the things that kind of triggered this off, which I find fascinating, is actors and writers saying, look, you can't use artificial intelligence to create these shows and to mimic my likeness so that you no longer have to pay me to act in your movie or your show.
Well, let's be clear. The word mimic is they're gonna just straight up use your likeness. It's not mimic. They're gonna straight up freaking
they're gonna create a digital skin puppet,
or Gal Gadot or whoever may not be acting in the next movie, and they're just going to be like, well, we got your face now. Like,
you signed the deal, and we're getting close from a technology standpoint that you could make it pretty convincing.
It's freaking skeezy.
Oh, it's skeezy as everything. Now, I hear, you and I, here's where we stopped ourselves last night when we were trying to talk, right?
Yeah.
I believe that art is created by humans for humans.
Yes.
Now, the reason I believe that is coming from a background of being a musician. I can tell when something is generated by a computer. A human creates irregularities in their art, and that is actually what we respond to as human beings, right? The complete, like the subtle inaccuracies or deviations from perfection. And when you're talking about using AI to make art, what you're talking about, if you were talking about the music industry, the label executives rarely cared about the music, the art, the craft, the form of music. What they cared about was distribution. And that looks like what's happening with these studio execs, right? They care about the distribution rights. I want to distribute this and make a bunch of money off of it. They care very little the quality of the art and the craft itself.
I mean, there's always going to be somebody that wants to try to figure out how to do something cheaper to try to get more profit, right? The thing that gets me specifically is, and Post Malone has been actually pretty vocal about this, the concern that because the way AI is growing, the AI is going to learn the idiosyncrasies that he has in his music, his voice, whatever, and somehow get programmed with the random cracks in the voice or
they're working
whatever.
On it now, right? It's getting better all the time. Yep.
And that, to me, it sounds silly, but to me, that is the foot in the door for literally the takeover. Like, because you're going to get to a point where you're not going to know whether you're talking to a human or you're talking to the computer, right? Like, customer service, okay, I'm fine with that being AI. You know, I understand. I get it. Plus, I could probably talk to somebody that I understand, right? Instead of being outsourced somewhere anyway. And I'm sorry if that offends some people, but I mean, anybody that's been on a customer service call has had that fight before where you've been like, I literally don't understand what you're saying. Like,
yeah. Someone comes on, they're like, "Hi, this is Jeremy."
Yeah, I don't think you're actually. I don't think that's your name. I don't think it's your name.
I wonder if you're in a country and there's an American call center, right? Like you're let's say you're in Japan, right? And you're like, I need some support on this thing, and you call. It's a bunch of Americans getting paid minimum wage in Idaho, right?
Yeah, I don't think that's the thing. I don't think...
Hi, this is Joe Smith. How can I help you today? Right, just like...
Man, your enunciation is really good. But so, and to be clear, too, these writer strikes aren't just about AI, because AI is the concern for a lot of people, obviously, because it's just going to straight up remove jobs. But the other side of it is execs... I don't remember the exec's name, but I was like, this dude got $339 million last year for whatever shows, and his actors got I think they had said something like 2% of that for every show that they were in. And then you add on top of that, if a show goes into syndication, that dude is still making money, significant money, for the shows in syndication, and those actresses aren't getting that money. They're getting little stipends. Like one of the actors, I can't remember who it was, but he was like, it was a show like Grey's Anatomy. That's what it was. Was great. He's like, Grey's Anatomy. Every freaking woman on the planet pretty much knows Grey's Anatomy, and the dude gets like a $34 check every month.
Yeah, you like royalty checks are hilarious. But like Scarlett Johansson ran into that with Black Widow. Because
didn't she win?
COVID,
though? She won that fight, right?
She did, but she'll never work for them again, right?
Yeah,
and that's
never.
right, and that's really the weird Scarlett Johansson being like, "Look, you didn't do a theatrical release of my movie, and my contract had theatrical release attachments, right? So like, I would have gotten paid for a theatrical release. You didn't do a theatrical release, and instead of making me whole and being like, hey, because look, if you and I were doing that, let's say you were an actor, and I'm sitting in a boardroom." And I'm like, hey, we can't do a theatrical release because the theaters are closed, right? COVID has hit, nobody's out, but we still want to put the movie out. Right, we still want to entertain somebody. We're still going to put it out on our new streaming platform, which we're trying to. It was Disney Plus, right? So we're trying to crank that thing up. Yeah. We're trying to beat Netflix. And you're sitting in the boardroom, and someone's like, "All right, we're going to distribute that through streaming rather than through a theatrical release." Your next job is to call Scarlett Johansson and say, "Can you come up here? Get your agent, get your attorney, whoever it is you think you need to renegotiate a contract. Get up here." Because as you're aware, COVID has hit the planet. We're trying to figure out how to distribute the movie. We want to do it right.
Yeah.
And
do
we
right
know
by
that
you.
your contract, right? And we know that your contract has theatrical release. We're not doing a theatrical release. Can you come renegotiate so we can make sure that you're made whole? And this thing, and no one did that. And there were. That's on purpose.
I'd almost argue that the other conversation occurred. How about we just don't say anything? Just don't say anything.
Oh, that's actually probably fair. Because you know what? You're probably right. Someone somewhere was like, so just a heads up. Right, just a heads up. This is going to be a problem. Yeah, don't worry about it. We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yep.
And that, to me, goes back to something you were saying earlier. Just be a better human, man. Right? Don't be jerks to each other. Like, you knew that was coming. Right? Now you're sitting there and saying, "Oh, I want to use AI to write my scripts." What? What? Why are you doing this? Right? Why are you this way?
Yeah.
You're making $500 million for greenlighting this. That's what you did. Yeah. That was the entirety of your contribution was saying, "Oh, I think we'll do it." And you went back to your estate, your palatial estate. And I am not someone who thinks executives don't do a lot, right? I'm not that. Executive jobs are hard.
For sure. Yeah.
So I'm not taking away from that. But the executive branches in this country, in the U.S., and maybe worldwide, have gotten so out of control with how they're compensated in relation to the people that work with them.
Yeah.
And there's no equity there. And to the point where writers are like, "We'll just pull the plug on everything. How about that?" Yeah. And then screen actors are like, "We'll just pull the plug on everything. How about that?" So the execs were like, "You know what? Forget you." And that's where it's gone.
Yeah.
And these people have been standing out in the heat and the weather, still striking, still holding their signs.
Not getting
paid. Right? And they're now Dune 2 is not coming out until 2024. Doggone it.
There's a lot of shows, right? Like all of the late night shows are red light. Dune 2 is rescheduled. There's a bunch of shows. What is that show that Spider-Man's girlfriend is on? Zendaya.
Wow.
Excuse me. I was trying to remember her name. I didn't remember anybody's name in that entire sentence except for Spider-Man. Zendaya, there's a show that she has on HBO in it that's God, what was the name of that show? I can't remember the name of the show. But her new season's been it was supposed to come out, I think, the beginning of 2024.
Euphoria?
And it's Euphoria. That the new season's been delayed like a full year or something like that. There's a whole. I mean, obviously the fallout from this is immense, right?
And we're just, as consumers, just now starting to feel it. But we're going to be feeling this for a while.
2024, I think, is going to be a whole lot of reruns, right? Because they're going to have to do a lot of catching up. And this is the thing that really worries me, though, is when you got asses like that exec that earned 300 and however many millions of dollars every year for like 6-7 years, what is it to him? He's like, all right, I don't care. You guys can stay in strike forever. I don't care. Like, I don't care. And we'll we'll launch the AI built show, and if it tanks, it tanks, and this is the new norm.
Yeah, because some of the AI shows won't, because they'll be better than the crap.
But until the AI is able to generate a script like, Tolkien or, a Game of Thrones or whatever, you're not going to have that again. Like, it's just going to stop happening, right? Like,
yeah, art is at its core the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
AI will get better and better and better and better and better at mimicking that human experience. But it would be a lot better if we just said, why don't we say art is art and protect that and let artists be artists, right? Can you believe there are artists out there who even get paid to do their art, right? Because that's an achievement. getting so good at art that you found a way to get paid to do it.
You earned a living, right?
You earned a living. And it's funny because this morning I was listening to Sirius XM, which I listen to quite a bit for music discovery, and I was listening, and one of the guys was like, "Oh, this is the new artist, and she's out, and she's signed with this." What did he say? He said, and she's currently signed with this well-known big indie label. And I was like, "That's not how indie works, friend."
Yeah, I was gonna say that's well-known and big with the word indie.
That's not how indie works. But this is a good opportunity for indie studios to step up and be like,
sure.
We're going to have the new norm, right? Maybe it's time for something, because these studios have gotten huge and they've consolidated into just a few studios. But maybe it's time for, maybe we should support some indie films. There was a Sidewalk Film Festival here in Birmingham right now, and maybe it's time to go support some indie films and some indie studios.
I would love to believe that might be the solution. People to get out of their houses and go see some live music, get out and meet. Maybe some theater. That would be amazing.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine?
But, and this is the tinfoil hat in me, I don't want to say you heard it here first, but I have a sneaky suspicion in the next month or month and a half, we're going to be talking masks and pandemic number 2.
Oh, you think so?
I hate to say it. I think this is the new thing that we're just going to do every freaking year, it seems like.
Everyone in my house right now is sick. So
yeah, but
so
here's
I would
the
encourage
thing.
anyone hanging out with us.
Here's the thing. Colds and flu happen, right? They've always happened. They've been happening since the beginning of time. Lockdowns and mask mandates and all that aren't. It's not a thing, right? Like, and that's the thing that worries me, because I think that's what set us up for all of this now, was pandemic. We went on lockdown. Everything had to grind to a halt. Everything had to be done remotely. Everything had to be done over Zoom calls. Or you had amazing shows like The Blacklist that did several episodes that they figured out ingenious ways to film one actor at a time and piece it together and make a show. Like, that type of ingenuity is needed. We don't need the whole let's just grind everything to a halt and stop life. Like, that's not how that should work. I mean,
so it'll be interesting to see, because I don't think we'll get to that again, because I
hope not. I sincerely hope I'm wrong.
I don't think we can. I think that I don't think you're wrong about how much the world changed during that time, and we're just coming to understand a little bit of it, right? The world changed a lot. Through that time, and there's some things we can see now, and then 10 years from now there will be more we can see, and then 100 years from now people will still be talking about it. And I think that from an economic standpoint, I think it's, even if as jaded as it may sound, from a political expediency standpoint, we won't be back there, because it doesn't benefit anyone to do that,
right?
And so it'll be interesting to see. It's the flu season's coming up, right? Cold season is almost upon us.
What I mean.
The new pollens are out. I think that's what got my crew. So it's gonna be interesting to see. Yeah, but you heard it here first, ladies, gents, dogs, and cats. Pull up a seat and take off your hats, because Happa Fodder has said.
Rarely do I ever want to be wrong. I sincerely hope I am wrong, because none of that was good for anyone. But I mean, well.
So let me tell you something that was wrong, Happa. I cannot, for the life of me, figure out how Prigozhin's plane took off with one wing.
Well, first of all, we need to talk about how the plane fell down 12 flights of stairs and out a window first.
It somehow got an irradiated poisoning. Fell down some stairs. Right? It fell out of a window.
The aircraft was actually powered by plutonium.
Yeah, I mean, you see video of the plane, and it's obviously coming down with one wing, and they're like, it just clished. It's like, no, it did not just crash.
Do you think anybody in Russia thinks?
Yes.
I'm just gonna say it. Like, do you think anybody in Russia thinks the bullshit story is actually convincing anyone?
All right, at this point, Russia has not overthrown his regime.
Yeah, fair.
And Prigozhin and like 14 dudes in a Humvee almost made it all the way to Moscow. And then months later, his airplane, we see a video of his airplane coming down in an obvious spin, which is not
By the
at
way,
all how airplanes.
Being in the military, and I've tracked aircraft that have taken damage. How he was spinning out of the sky was not a mechanical failure. That is a wing coming off. Wing falling the hell off of the aircraft.
Like I said, I can't figure out how they took off without a wing. Because obviously...
right?
Obviously, they got all the way up there without one wing.
Oh, my gosh.
Russia's a mess right now, bud. No joke. Russia is an absolute...
In our little friend chat group, I don't remember who it was that posted it first. I think Deacon posted it first. And I was just like, I read that. I was like, really? Like, seriously?
Oh, you're talking about when the plane came down? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like...
Well, and to be honest with you, there's actually talks that he might have been dead for a while. He's people think he might have been assassinated a while back, and they just didn't. Wagner didn't want to admit it. Like, didn't.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's Russia, right? So basically, the only thing the thing you can rule out is whatever they said was true. That's the thing isn't true. Whatever they said was true is absolutely the thing you can rule out as being true.
If they came right out and said we assassinated him, I would have believed that it was an accident.
Yeah. This morning at 9:46 a.m., we shot down Prigozhin's plane. I'd be like,
nope,
completely accidental.
Engine failure, 100%.
Yeah, 100% engine failure. They actually did get it in the air with one wing. The sons of guns. I don't know how they did it. But yeah, so Russia's a mess, man. And now you've got Wagner folks saying, they were so loyal to Prigozhin, many of them are out of prison because of him, that they're going to we're going to exact revenge. And you've got, rumors of Putin going around all over Russia, starting up tiny military bases of loyalists that he can use to skip to if things go bad. This is not the Russia we grew up being scared of.
I'm willing to believe in the next, I'll say maybe 5 years, you're going to have a situation where all of these, because last podcast we talked about, because he was, or somebody did a story on the fact that he was starting up a bunch of mini Wagners, right, all over Russia.
Yep.
At what point are those guys going to start texting each other and being like, "Hey, man,
sure,
if we meet up in Moscow at this date, at what point is that going to be an actual thing?" I bet you in the next 5-6, because surely there's enough folks in that country. And to be clear, I'm not one of those people that hates automatically all Russians just because this war is going on.
Absolutely not. Russia is full of amazing, beautiful, vibrant human beings,
and
that
I'd be willing to believe
unfortunately misrepresented by their leadership.
Exactly, and the majority of them don't want what's going on. I promise you. But they all know that if they say something, bad things happen, right? So.
Yep, absolutely. People, this is something probably worth mentioning, at least my outlook on this, and I've had conversations with people, never you, so I'd love your take on this, but I've had conversations with people over time. When you find someone and they have a predisposition towards hate, right, or a predisposition towards mistrust for someone because they're simply from a place, they look a certain way, whatever the case may be. And I was having a conversation once with someone, and I was like, look, you got to understand, man, I don't care where you go in the world, everyone wants the same thing. They want to have a reasonably happy life. They want to love their family. They want to have enough food to eat, a place to sleep, and they want to die happy. It is not that humans are not such complex creatures on the whole.
Yeah.
That they are different. Now, we do have maniacal narcissists, right?
That happens.
We tend to, as humans, we tend to grant power only to those who seek it, right? Which is one of our one of our biggest flaws, right? Yeah. And so Russia, like you said, man, Russia's full of a beautiful history. Moscow has always been on my list of places I would love to go see.
Yeah.
The amount of history there, the amount of culture, and it's really, to me, sad, right? Where the state of Russia, where it is right now, right? It's not in a good spot. You've got leadership was seemingly obsessed with reforming the USSR, and willing to do anything to make that happen, and has honestly left Russia in a place of it can't defend itself without nuclear weapons.
Yeah. Or it has to at least threaten with them, right? To be taken
Certainly.
serious.
Yeah. What they have left. They've proven every weapon system they have doesn't work.
Right.
It just doesn't work.
And they just recently announced that they're pulling back. They have a bunch of T-14s or whatever their most advanced tank is. They're pulling all those out of Ukraine because they're worried they're going to lose them, because the Ukrainians are proving to be better at guerrilla warfare than they anticipated, right?
Yeah, I mean, a Ukrainian with a $45 Walmart drone and a hand grenade taking out tanks.
They're doing ridiculous work over there with those things, man. Like, good on them for it too. But I mean,
absolutely.
And to prove your point, I mean, there's stories during World War II and World War I. World War I was when you first started seeing the stories, I think. Like at Christmas, white flags going up and German soldiers and the Allied sides literally leaving their guns behind, coming out, trading gifts of food and stuff and jackets back and forth on Christmas Eve. And these guys are sworn to kill each other, and they're disobeying the officers that are ordering them back and everything, and just sharing like cups of coffee and stuff in the middle of the night together, and then the next day going back to their trenches, going right back to, unfortunately, killing each other. And the same thing happened in the Battle of the Bulge. The same thing happened, everywhere. And humans, I have always said, and I know I'm naive for thinking it, or I've been told I'm naive for thinking it, that the average human wakes up every morning and doesn't think about going out and doing harm to another human being. Like, the average human being gets up and goes out, does the work that they need to do, and does whatever they are anticipated to do with the best intention in mind. Like, and that's why I always say, like, be a better human, because I would like to think that people would have the better intention and foot forward rather than the negative. So, the average Russian out there, I promise you, they're talking in hushed tones about how much they hate the fact that they're at war, and they recognize, I promise you, that the rest of the world is not okay with them probably right now. Like,
There's a song by the Black Crowes. You ever heard of that band?
Mm-hmm.
Black Crowes. One of my favorite songs by the Black Crowes, and I've got a lot, right? One of my favorite bands of all time. One of the songs is called Wiser Time. And there's a chorus in that song, and the chorus goes like this. On a good day, I know it ain't every day we can part the sea.
Yeah.
And on a bad day, and I know it ain't every day, then glory is beyond our reach. What a fantastic line, and that's really the human condition. We can be unbelievable. We can part seas. And on some days, we can't even let someone cross the street.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be a better human, Happa.
For sure. I mean, I'll never stop parroting the same exact line. I whether that's, just opening a door for somebody at a supermarket or being so kind is just being kind to each other. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, right? And I was thinking about this the other day. I think greed is the biggest problem. Greed in general is the biggest problem on the planet. Greed, period. You don't need to go any further than greed. Everything. Corporations, the sleazy stuff that's going on, greed. The leader of any country doing dirty another country 9 times out of 10, greed. Like,
I was took my daughter to Chipotle the other day, and Chipotle it's Chipotle, right? It's good. It's fresh.
Yep.
But they have this drink, and it was like a cherry watermelon limeade. Okay, so they have like a summer special drink.
Right.
And, I got that drink, and my daughter and I sat down, we were eating. And I had gotten up to get a refill, and there was a guy. He was a really big guy, right? And he was like sitting there, and he had his cup, and he took that limeade, and I was standing there, and he didn't know I was there, but I was waiting on him because I wanted to get a refill.
Yeah.
And he took a sip of it. He got a little bit more. He took another sip, and he just did this kind of, he's trying to figure out what do I think about
little world.
Right? What do I think about watermelon cherry limeade? And I was like, is it good, my man? And he turned around and goes, it's all right. And I was like, I just drank a whole cup of it. And he's like, is it all right the whole time, or is it too sweet? And I was like, no, it's not that bad. You put some ice in it, it melts. It's good. He's like, oh, I'm gonna try that. And so, that was it, right? That was the interaction. Yeah. He gets up to leave, and he's like, man, you know what? I'll see you later. It was good to talk to you. And I was like,
you left an impression.
I don't have any idea what that guy's going through. I don't know what that guy's life is like, but someone just being friendly to him over a drink apparently left an impression. Why can't we be like that more? Why can't we spread those vibes? I mean, I don't always do it. I just, I'm the same way. I get distracted and I'm in my own world and I'm in my own head, and right. But man, it's worth being intentional about how you interact with the human beings around you.
I mean, you may make somebody's day, man. When I went home to Oregon this last May, we were walking around, my brother, his wife, Rita, and I walking around on the Oregon coast. We went to breakfast at a place, and, I'm in Oregon. I'm a long ways from the South, boy. But if you give me a good plate of biscuits and gravy, you made my whole day.
Boy, you're talking my language now, Happy.
And we walked into a place, and I thought, man, I know I'm in the Pacific Northwest. I'm not expecting biscuits and gravy to be a thing up here, but I really could use some biscuits and gravy right now. I normally don't eat breakfast, but when I get with my brother, we tend to have a little bit to drink. There may be some other things going on there that also might add to that hunger a little bit.
Multivitamins.
And a little bit, yeah. And we walked in, and there was a gentleman, and he was scarfing. I mean, there was a plate, and there was some biscuits, and there was some gravy, but he was attempting to get as much of it into his face hole as he could get. And I said, how's that biscuits and gravy, man? He looked up at me with a full mouth, didn't even skip a beat. This is what you want. This is what he said to me. And I remember I ordered the biscuits and gravy, and it was legit. Probably some of the best. And that dude, as I left, so he had a whole family, his kids, his wife, whatever there. And we were just getting our food and starting to eat when they were getting up to leave. And he was across the area. Like, we walked past him to get seated, right? And he walked across the dining room to come to me. Hey, look, what do you think, man? Like, just and that's just a silly interaction. But at the same time, like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, I wasn't being overly friendly. In fact, I was being rude because I was interrupting his meal, realistically. But I wasn't, like, slapping him, like, hey, man. I just was like, looks like it's good because he had a face full of food, like, I'm all about it. I know it's hard to believe if you're listening to the podcast and you haven't seen my actual face. I actually kind of like food. So.
Now have. You've overstated that, but biscuits and gravy are an exception, man. Look,
it's a lifestyle. Where I'm from. Not gonna lie, biscuits and gravy is a lifestyle.
I'm pretty sure biscuits and gravy are in my zip code somehow.
I'm telling you, and
350 biscuits and gravy.
I'm telling you, but and that's what I talk about is like being a better human. It doesn't mean necessarily like keeping to yourself or stuff, but even just communicating and being friendly and just. Because you don't know the impact you'll have on somebody if they just had a bad day or something, and you even make them laugh or chuckle about something or whatever, just being goofy. And a lot of times when I'm out in town, especially when I'm with friends, I'll just be goofy just to be goofy because I'm all about making people laugh. Like, because laughter is a food of life. I don't care what nobody says, right?
Sure.
And so that's the part of it, and that We're off the subject we were talking about, but I mean, I wish from El Presidente or President for Life or Prime Minister, whatever the leader is, all the way down to Ricky Rockbreaker,
Oh, Ricky, man, Ricky breaking those rocks.
He works it every day, man.
Ricky every day. You can depend on Ricky Rockbreaker.
He breaks them rocks like nobody can.
You can depend on Ricky. Man. Every day. So,
but I just wish that we could, man. I wish we could.
I agree.
You know,
I think life has made. This is one of the reasons you and I. We've talked about a lot of this before, but this is one of the reasons we get along. Is I believe life's made up of the tiny moments, and there will be a point, if I'm fortunate in the way I exit this life, that I will be on a deathbed and able to reflect. And what you will miss most and what you will regret the most is not the big moments. It's the tiny moments. It's the little moments. It's those things. And you have to be intentional about those. And it's worth, if you want to live a life with no regrets, live a life with no regrets by being intentional about how you spend the everyday. Sure, we want to have our trips to wherever, and we want to have those big moments, and those are important too, and those are memorable. But on the whole, happiness comes in the form of being happy every day and every moment. If you're not happy, here's something I will promise you, Happa. You want some wisdom things I've learned, right?
Oh man, here it comes.
If you're not happy with what you have, you'll never be happy with what you get.
Damn.
So that's greed is a treadmill that kills no one but you. So, all right, Happa, what you watching, man? Let's talk about what Happa's watching. This is one of my favorite parts of every podcast. We do it every time. I freaking love this. I love to know what you're watching. I always write it down, and then about half the time I watch it. I have them all on my list to watch. But so Happa, what are you watching?
So first of all, one of the, going back a little bit, we talked about shows being put on hold. Somebody Feed Phil's new season's been put on hold.
Oh no, Happa.
And that really upsets me.
How did you take that? Did you cry that night?
I was hoping that he had slid that season in under the radar, and legitimately has upset me, because that show, I cannot emphasize it enough. I've been told that some of my friends have said I can't watch the show because it's very corny, but I'll look, man. The world needs some corny.
I like that show.
The world needs some corny. All right.
If Biscuits and Gravy was a show, that's it.
Just saying.
It's just wholesome and good, and it's not stressful, and it's educational.
I love that he, at the end of every episode, brings everybody together for a meal.
Yeah,
like that. And when I say everybody, I don't mean just the people that he had on the show, like the staff, the producers. Like he'll shove food in the face of the cameraman on camera. Like,
oh yeah,
that to me, anybody that knows me knows that Anthony Bourdain is somebody that I've tried to aspire to thought process wise forever, and that was one of the things I loved about him and how he handled it. Everybody is a person. He was very thoughtful. I had the privilege of meeting him twice, and somehow he remembered me the second time from the first time I met him. I mean, that has left an indelible imprint on me as amazing.
Sure, absolutely.
And to me, Phil is the same type of level of thought process. But anyway, I'm sorry, I sidetracked. The military side of me saw the show Lioness on Amazon.
Oh, and what did you think?
It's got Zoe Saldana in it, so I'm already.
So it's starting off on a good leg there.
She could have been sitting reading freaking War and Peace for 6 episodes, and I would have been fine. Yeah, I'd been fine. I'm just saying. No, it legitimately is. It's a God. I'm trying to think of what kind of show it would be like. It's a great take on special operations groups. And the twist is that it's one of them is being run by a woman, and a woman that's trying to have a family and run a family and then run her operator's family, and I don't know. It was a really good show. I think it's a great show, and it shows kind of the risks that our folks put in to get done what they need to get done every day. But it also shows some of the darker sides of what our government does to get things done, kind of thing. Which anytime I'm down for another conspiracy, I'm already. Oh yeah, I'm okay with that. That's
fine.
Great
we just
show.
Finished watching.
First season is only
worth checking out.
So yeah, I think it's worth watching for sure.
Okay. Yeah, we just finished Jack Ryan and
oh, it's so
same
good,
sort of
right?
deal. So the Jack Ryan show, and this was the last season. If you haven't seen it, it's on Amazon Prime. And Jack Ryan is such a bigger than life character. And one of the things I think the show did really well, and I'm going to take all the characters out of it because I think the character acting was really good in that show.
Yep.
I think it was pretty exceptional. Ted Kaczynski and that's not Ted Kaczynski. What's
John Krasinski.
John Krasinski.
Wasn't that
Ted,
the Unabomber?
The Unabomber. He's not in that show, best of my knowledge. But the guy that plays, it's the guy it's Jim from The Office. There you go. That's how I remember him.
He
John
has
Krasinski.
got a lot of serious roles, by the way, and
he's fantastic.
I'm digging him for it. Yes,
he is really fantastic in that show, and the supporting cast is just on point. But what I think that show did as well as anything is on location filming.
Yep.
And if you watch that show for anything, watch it for the locations they're filming in. The work they do filming there is gorgeous, and they put all these amazing locations in a really good light. Myanmar, there was a lot done in Myanmar in this most recent one, and it's just really fascinating to me. The show's good. I enjoy the show, but it's exactly Jack Ryan. It's what I expected it to be, but the location filming. So I may check out Lioness. I think that's something that my wife and I can get into.
So I love John Krasinski in the roles that he plays. Yeah, it's near the same thing.
The show about Ted Kaczynski. Seriously, dude.
I love the roles that he's had since he's gotten a little bit more serious. Like, have you ever seen 13 Hours?
No.
Put that on your list. 13 Hours is about the Benghazi ordeal.
Oh, yes. I'm going to have a hard time watching that one, and you're not going to talk off stream or off podcast about why. But yeah, so 13 Hours.
Yep. I am always up for seeing, and I know some people might roll their eyes when I say this, but anytime I can watch a movie about events that I have direct knowledge about, I will. 13 Hours, I was actually off the coast listening to a lot of the radio chatter. I was on a ship that was wanting to support them, and we were told to stand down. That show
and
nails
you
a lot
and that
of
ship were
things.
not alone. That moment,
a lot,
and wanting to support, right?
And if you really want to educate yourself about what happened decision-wise in our government at the time, not to get political again, I would watch that movie. I highly recommend it because it will educate you on a level that most Americans I don't think understand what happened there. But Jack Ryan's great, and what sucked me into the Jack Ryan series wasn't John Krasinski. It was knowing that Michael Kelly was in that show. I don't know if you know who Michael Kelly is. He was in that show. He was in House of Cards. He's
that guy. That guy is. Now, have you seen all of the seasons?
Yes. For Jack Ryan?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so you're caught up, and I'm not going to give any spoilers here. But if you don't know Michael Kelly, he has been in so many things, and what I will tell you is
mostly supporting roles, which is sad too.
Absolutely, and he is one of the best supporting actors you're going to find anywhere. And in Jack Ryan, the part that he plays is
I love his character.
He's just perfect for it, and he plays it perfectly.
Yeah.
But he does it every time.
Yeah.
Right. The supporting cast in that show is just phenomenal.
But Michael Kelly has had that role. The role he's got in Jack Ryan, is the exact same role he had in House of Cards.
Oh, dude, in House of Cards, in House of Cards, he is cold.
And by the way, he's in Lioness too.
Okay, see, maybe that's it.
He plays
maybe Michael Kelly shows are what I need to be checking out. Michael Kelly,
that man is a good actor. I wish he was more front center. To be honest.
I did too. He's fantastic. There was a basketball player, Robert Horry, who played on a lot of championship teams, and he was never the guy, right?
Yeah.
Lakers, Houston,
yeah,
right?
Man.
Like he was winning a lot of championships, and there's just people out there who make or break an endeavor because of their involvement. Michael Kelly to me is as good as it gets. So cool. Well, very cool. Thank you for sharing what you're watching, Happa. That's always part of my favorite.
If you do watch 13 Hours, though, I will say that if I would be surprised if you didn't shed a couple tears. I'm just warning you ahead of time.
I have no doubt. I have a personal connection there, so I'll hit you up at some point and we can talk about it. But yeah, that would be probably a heavy watch for me and well worth it.
It's pretty rough. The first time I watched it, I actually had to pause it and step away for a bit because it was
yeah.
It's rough.
But, yep.
Anywho,
so what are you?
What are you listening to? Enough about me. What are you listening to?
So, this is interesting, right? Because I do new music. Love to hear new music, and I always listen to it in album form. So anyone who doesn't know that about me, I'll share that for the podcast. Never shared it here. Love music, obviously, super into music, and love to hear things in full-length album form. So I consider, if you're a good artist, you can make a song. If you make a great album, you're a great artist. The best make many great albums, right? So if you can listen to an album, which is a collection of music end to end, that's a special occurrence, and it tells you kind of where an artist is in their world, in their life, where they are at a point in time. And you can go back in time and you can talk to Pink Floyd, right? Or you can go back and Steely Dan, right? You can go back and there's all these reference, but the Beatles, obviously, Beach Boys with Pet Sounds, like these were point in time moments, and one song would not have conveyed that.
Yeah.
Right. So like Pet Sounds is a great example, right? The wall of sound, Phil Spector, like the stuff that Brian Wilson was doing from an album standpoint was unbelievable. But one song would have covered it. So so as an introductory, I'll always talk about albums, right? So when I'm listening to something. Right now I'm listening to Grace Potter had a new album come out 2 weeks ago called Mother Road. And I don't know if you know Grace Potter or not. Grace Potter, great keyboard work, fantastic show. Started off life, her career is kind of a roots rock, southern rock, blues rock, artist, and has moved in a little bit more of a pop kind of direction more recently. But Mother Road, that album is a bit back to where she came from, and it's a very good album, very good listen. Trying to listen through that my probably 15th or 16th time. Very much enjoying it. I happen to like Grace Potter anyway. I'm a keyboard player. Grace Potter plays keys. So I'm kind of, I think, legally required to enjoy her music. But yeah, so I would say check out Grace Potter, Mother Road. And Asking Alexandria had an album that came out Friday that I'm pretty excited to check out. Have not listened all the way through yet, but if you're into a little bit harder rock stuff, Asking Alexandria had an album that came out. So I'm looking forward to checking that out too.
Nice, fair enough. And so, should we talk about the game that you and I
yeah, we always have to do what you're playing. So this is the last thing we always do. If we're gonna hit 2 hours, we've got about 12 minutes left. So what I'll say is every podcast, right, we've gotten to the point where we like to talk about a game we're playing together. Now the reason we do that is because you and I met as a result of video games.
Yep.
And we do spend a probably more than average amount of time playing video games together. It's usually us and our pal Deacon, right? And we hang out and play video games. And for a long time through our friendship, that was a video game. And more recently, it's been a variety of games. And so every podcast, every 2 weeks, we talk about a new game that we've picked up. And the more recent one, I'll let you talk more about it. But you and Deacon were like, hey, you got to check this game out. It's Remnant 2. And I think that game's worth talking about. So tell me your thoughts on Remnant 2.
So I am not, and this is probably a more recent development than not, I don't enjoy games so much that are solo playthrough games, like Red Dead Redemption's typically played by yourself and you go through the story, there's an entire story, and everything. Those games bore me. I love them at first, but I get bored very quickly, and then I don't finish them. I'm a huge lover of games that I can play with friends and go through the entire campaign with friends and progress with friends. And Remnant 2, for me, has been one of those games. And the thing I love about Remnant 2 is there is the meta that everyone's going to tell you should do this, but then you can build to how you play and be just fine. And if you look up YouTube videos, you'll see two different types of videos. It'll say solo play, group play, because you can play the game by yourself 100% and be fine. You have to build a certain way. And then you can play with your friends, and that'll be a completely different build to your character.
Oh yeah.
And the way you build your character is to support the group, right? Not yourself. And that's the thing I love so much about Remnant, is the fact that they nailed from the initial start of the game co-op, not like, a whole chapter into the game. And the art department.
Oh my gosh.
Holy crap.
The art department is, yeah.
The venues are gorgeous. Like,
yeah.
There was a few times where Seven and I were roaming through the world and we both just stopped and I was like, "Hey man," or he said, "Hey man, look up." And you just look up at the world and you're just blown away.
It takes a lot in video games. So I would say that the art design and the sound design, which I'll come back to in a second because I'm just a geek for that. But
yeah, man,
the sound design is on point. But the art, it takes a lot these days, I think, to impress. When you're talking about the set design, right? The set pieces that have been designed for video games are pretty routinely at this point stunning.
Yeah, yeah.
Video game companies have gotten pretty good at that.
Yeah.
And they're starting to get really good at sound design, with music and ambiance and the different sound designs.
We were talking about that last night, actually, the audio.
We were, but the art in Remnant 2 is deep and textured and well done, and it works well with RTX, and it looks amazing, and even the textures are on point.
It's not copy
the
and
skyboxes
like
are mind blowing.
Right?
It's gorgeous. It's absolutely positively gorgeous, and it's the kind of gorgeous that just stops you from time to time, and you think, wow. So I'm sitting there playing a video game, and you're just looking around. Of course, about then some guy throws some Molotov cocktail and hits me in the back of the head.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting there like, oh my God, look at the sky. And it has been a blast to play that game. It really has.
And I love that you can build, there's no right or wrong way as far as I can tell necessarily to build your character in that game. You build a character how you think it's going to best benefit you or the team. So like most games nowadays, people that have gamed with me haven't realized I usually build for a tank. Dude, that's just in the middle of the fray, headbutting everything.
Oh, is that always how you do it?
That's pretty much how I am. If there's a tank in the game, I don't necessarily care about my damage output. If I'm able to aggro everything to me and let the rest of the group kill everything, I'm fine with it. And so I did that in I think I don't even know how many games I've done that now. I've built my characters that way, but I love that you can do that, or you can build a DPS, or you can build to be a healer, or you can build to be whatever. There's a lot of builds in that game, and I think it's great that they have such a variety in how you can build your characters.
Yeah, I've been impressed too with the fun versus grind versus complexity balance.
Yeah.
It's sometimes hard for games to really achieve that when you're talking about the game needs to be fun first and foremost, right? It's got to be fun. But there's plenty of games that are fun that don't keep you engaged for long enough, right? And so in order for it to keep you engaged, it's got to have a certain amount of complexity, things for you to figure out, puzzles to work out, and things of that nature. Sure. And then to keep you coming back, there's got to be some rewarding grind, right? Some amount of thing, a looter shooter, which is what this is. It's like, okay, I got to go figure out, how to do all this stuff and get my build. And then once I've got all that figured out, I got to go kill the things and get the stuff. And the balance of that in this game has been really kind of phenomenal. You and I've had way too much fun, and in particular when we have Deacon around with us, right? We've had way too much fun learning boss fights, right? You don't get punished, right? And we had a particular boss fight the other night, and I swear we're so close to wiping every 5-6 times, and we ended up winning the boss. And it's like, oh yeah, and you get that nice little celebration. It is a well done game. It kind of caught me off guard. You had been talking about it before it came out. I had not really been keeping up with it. You'd been keeping up with it, and I was like, all right, this thing's all right. And yeah, definitely a good purchase. To me, well worth the money you'd spend on the game.
I think it's definitely worth checking out if you're on the fence about it. Go hop on YouTube and go look up some videos or whatever, and it I don't know, it's worth it. It's a fun game. It's not overly heavy mechanics. It's pretty intuitive as far as I can tell mechanics-wise. You do need to look up some stuff every now and then, just kind of see how things affect whatever. But that's in any game nowadays. But yeah, Remnant 2, I highly recommend. Highly recommend.
Yeah, absolutely worth checking out. Absolutely.
For sure.
Well, Happa, that does it for our list of things to talk about. I think we made it through our whole list, and we did it. Last time we were 5 minutes long.
Yeah.
So 5 minutes.
Happen.
5 minutes. Well, 5 minutes on this side of it. I'll take it. 5 minutes ain't bad. It's really going to be 4 minutes and 6 seconds. So.
Right. I always mention that at the end of every podcast, definitely either in the chat here, if you guys watch the video itself, leave comments to us, hit the like button. It helps the algorithm. You guys, I'm sure, have heard that a million times from various YouTubers. But if you have questions or topics you'd love for us to talk about, definitely put those in there or shoot us an email. The email should be on the YouTube account as well. It's pretty straightforward. Real talk with Hapa and 7 and spelled out, not an ampersand, because you can't do that in email addresses apparently. Or shoot either of us a message on whatever social media platform or Discord. I think you've said it before. You pretty much everywhere you're 7, right?
Yeah, I'm on there. S3VYN on just about everything. I try for, since 1999, I've been using that name. And so I try to have an account, even if I don't actively use it, I try to have the account at least parked. So yeah, I'm on pretty much everything. And probably the easiest way to reach me is through Twitter, X, whatever. You can DM me there. That seems to be the way most people want to hit me up. So yeah, there's that. We both have Twitch channels, right? Worth checking out using these names. I'm on mine far less than probably I should be, but it is there, right? And I am lurking on Twitch here and there. And you, what is your favorite social media? How can people get in touch with you directly?
Honestly, any of them. Hapa_fodder is, if you Google that, you'll find me. I'm the same way. I think I've pretty much squatted everywhere, every platform I can think of with Hapa_fodder, and I own them. So just DM me, Twitch, Twitter, Discord, whatever the case may be. You'll probably find me. We definitely value your feedback. Definitely value the likes and subscribes and all that. And I think this has been an awesome ride. I don't think that 7 and I say that enough, that we sincerely appreciate the feedback and the views that you guys give us. I know I don't necessarily want to speak for 7, but I'm pretty sure that we both think the same way. We appreciate
I absolutely hate it. Drives me crazy. Hey, it is worth mentioning though, because there's Tuesdays, every other Tuesday, we do the podcast live, and it's over on YouTube. So if you want to check us out there, you can watch us live. You can chat with us while we do the podcast. We don't generally address chats while we are doing the podcast, simply because the podcast most commonly is consumed through podcast mediums, right? So there would be it'd be a little bit startling to be like, what are they talking about chat? And so, but if you do want to watch and you want to hang out and chat, I usually do respond in chat, even if we don't address it on the podcast. And then you can get our podcast literally anywhere you get podcasts. So that's, I don't care if it's Spotify, Apple, wherever it is you get podcasts, you should be able to get the podcast. And we do appreciate you all hanging out, listening. We do have a particular show, podcasts, that we're looking to create subjects for. Future state. Someone brought up the idea to us that we should talk about historical events and our thoughts on those, and we thought that was pretty fascinating, as both of us kind of have an interest in history, and that might be something fun to do. So if you have a favorite historical event, reach out to one of us, let us know, and we would love to hear your craziest ideas of historical events, because we may bite off some of the crazier ones. Honestly, knowing us, we may be like, let's try that really odd one that someone recommended that we don't know anything about. Let's read up on it and then have our hot takes on, Joan of Arc or whatever it is that we decide to talk about.
Yeah. And that will do it for us, I think, today, the 29th of August, 2023. We hope to see you all, not this coming Tuesday, but the following, so 2 weeks from now. As always, that's the disclaimer. If something comes up in real life, we may push it back a little bit, but we try every other Tuesday to do as we can. So appreciate y'all. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and hope to see you guys next time. Any last thoughts?
No, I think you said it. Be a better human, be good to each other, take care of each other, reach out to someone you haven't heard from in a while, and we will see you all when we see you.
Have a great night, guys.